storm is brewing. All right, there's a video. You can watch my previous video on this subject where I discuss some of these issues a little bit more in depth. There's a video that was posted on the Facebook page of the Rockland County GOP. And as I said in my previous video, I'm obviously a Hasidic Jew. I'm a rabbi, but for those who haven't been watching my videos, I am a Republican. I'm a registered Republican. I support President Trump. I vote almost exclusively Republican, except sometimes when there's no Republican choice on the ballot. I'm a Republican through and through. And I want to discuss my critique of this video. I mean, I understand where it's coming from. And as I said in the previous video, a lot of people claim that it's anti-Semitic. I reject that because it's not attacking Jews in a racial sense, and I reject that whole idea of Jews being a race. Judaism is a religion and not a race. And Ivanka Trump is a million times more Jewish than George Soros, and I discussed that in the previous video. Is the video perhaps anti-Hasidic or anti-Orthodox Jewish? I kind of reject that as well. Nobody is saying that Hasidic Jews cannot live side by side with other people and practice their faith. So I do not believe that in any way this video is anti-Hasidic. But my issue is as a Republican. It's almost like that episode of Seinfeld where Jerry Seinfeld goes into the Catholic Church and he goes to the confession booth and he sits down on it like it's a bench instead of kneeling, not knowing what he's supposed to do. And he tells the priest that he believes that the dentist, Tim Watley, converted to Judaism for the jokes. That he can, he's looking for a total joke immunity. And the priest asks him, and does that offend you as a Jewish person? He said, no, it offends me as a comedian. And again, this video doesn't offend me as a Jew and not as a Hasidic Jew. But it does offend me as a Republican, because the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln, the party of individual liberty, the party of small government. I do tend to be more from the libertarian or classical liberal side of the Republican Party, the Glenn Beck side of the Republican Party. And as I said, unlike Glenn Beck, I did vote for the president in the general election, although I voted for Ted Cruz in the primary, and I very reluctantly voted for the president. But like Glenn Beck, I'm very pleasantly surprised by what President Trump is doing, and I'm very happy with it. And I have no qualms about voting for him again in 2020. I have no havamina. That's an Aramaic term. It wouldn't cross my mind to vote against him in a primary, even if Ted Cruz ran against him. And I love Ted Cruz, and I know a lot of people don't like him. I still perhaps would prefer Ted Cruz as president than Donald Trump, but we got to go there slowly, and I think Donald Trump is a good stepping stone to that, and Mike Pence, I think, would be a better president in my approach than Donald Trump. But again, I think Donald Trump really, to me, is more of a liberal, and he should be uniting this country, and I think he is, and I think just the media is just lying about him to try to stop that. But when it comes to this video from Rockland County GOP, as I said, I do not live in Rockland County, but I do work in Rockland County. I do have a position a rabbinical position in Rockland County. So, I am part of the Rockland County community in a certain sense, even though I don't reside there. But I do work there part-time, and I have for several years, and I had several positions working in Rockland County over the years, both in the Jewish community and now in my current position in the public sector. But again, this video does not offend me as a Jew as much as a Jewish person, as the priest would say in Seinfeld, but as a Republican. Because the crux of this video is the Hasidim are involved in overdevelopment, and they take over the schools, and they take over everything, and they're going to ruin the environment. And look what they did in neighboring Orange County. And I'm just like, I don't get, this sounds like something that Democrats would be talking about. Because Republicans are supposed to be for small government, limited government, private property rights, even, I would prefer to leave the religious issues out of this, but religious freedom, religious liberty. I mean, I know, there are law firms in Texas that are defending the Hasidic communities in Rockland County against the discrimination in zoning and so forth, and the violations of religious land use and Institutionalized Persons Act, something that I know both sides of, because I worked with institutionalized persons. I'm a chaplain, both in a mental hospital and in a state prison, state mental hospital and state prison. So I deal with institutionalized persons. That's my profession. But the religious land use side is, of course, also near and dear to my heart. And the Republican Party is also supposed to be the party today of federalism. And really, my issue with this video is that it sounds like something the Democrats would make. And I'm not saying that the Republicans are against the environment in any way. But this environmentalism and using environmentalism as a means of control, government control, that's the Democrats. That's what the Democrats do. The Republicans tend to be more conservationist as opposed to environmentalist. And perhaps in that issue, there could be claims that it could be an actual issue, although that's been widely been debunked as well. But what I would suggest is we could compare Rockland County to Orange County and the difference. Now there's two big differences that we have here between Rockland County and Orange County. Two opposite differences. One is Rockland County is a much smaller county geographically. Not sure, it's probably a similar size as far as population, but geographically, Rockland County is the smallest county in New York State. But the other difference is that the Jewish community in Rockland County is much, much bigger than the Jewish community in Orange County. So that is an interesting point that we can discuss. So they're making comparisons in this video to Orange County, New York, where you have the town of Palm Trees, a new town that seceded from the town of Monroe in Orange County earlier this year. And the complications with that. What's that all about? A little bit of the history there. So, meaning in Rockland County, you do have two villages. Now, in New York State, people who don't live in New York State, the governmental structure of New York State is as follows: is that you have towns, you have counties, right? Which every state except Louisiana has counties, and Louisiana they have counties. They call them parishes. But in New York State, within counties, you have towns, and you have within the towns, and you could also have villages, and then you also have cities, which are separate from towns, and then you have New York City, which is a totally different thing, where you have one city with 5 counties within the city. We'll leave New York City out of the equation. New York City is a totally different species than the rest of New York State. I know as a man of the cloth that I sign marriage licenses, and the marriage licenses in every town, every county in New York State are one way, except New York City is different, and the laws are actually different in New York State. And we're not talking about marriage licenses now. I've made other videos about that, many videos on that subject and if anybody's interested in learning how to be a wedding officiant and having some advice on how to do it, I've made a series of videos on that subject, and I've officiated probably around 700 weddings of all different religions since 2007. So it's been about 12 years since I started that little side business that I've had. To go back to what we're talking about, this is really the big issue here is, what exactly are we talking about when it comes to this video here? They're comparing it to, like I said, to Orange County, to Curious Joel. So what happened, the history of it is already in the 1960s in Rockland County, you had a Jewish village form. Once you have 500 people in an area who want to, the majority of the voters in that area, which have 500 individuals living there, could have children who can't vote in there, but when you have 500 people living in an area, adults and children, and the majority of the people living there vote, they can form their own incorporated village. I grew up in the incorporated village of Floral Park, which meant that I had to pay more taxes. Not I did, but my parents did. And then, when we moved upstate, and we did not move into an incorporated village. A village has a mayor, has its own separate government. They might, take care of the garbage pickup and stuff like that, as opposed to where I live, where we don't have a village, and we don't even have garbage pickup. We can pay for it ourselves, but we go to the dump once a week or something, and still have to pay to dump our garbage in the town dump. But I live in a very, very rural area. We're thinking maybe now that I'm working full time, maybe we can afford the luxury of of getting garbage pickup. I know it sounds absurd to a lot of people. We don't have mail delivery where I live. We have to go to the post office box, the P.O. box, and pick up our mail because there's no mail delivery. Because we live in such a rural area. But, that's part of what it is to have a village government and so forth. So you vote for a mayor of a village and so forth, and other things. So the first Hasidic village incorporated in New York State was New Square in Rockland County, and it's the headquarters of the Square Hasidic dynasty. There's more than one Square Hasidic dynasty, but the bigger one, I'd say, and which has adherents all over the world. And inspired by that, the Satmar Rebbe was looking for land to make a community. He didn't really care, more or less, whether or not he would make a village. He just wanted to have a rural community outside the city where people could focus on worshiping God and living a simple life and not be faced with the temptations of city life. And so he acquired some land in upstate New York in the town of Monroe in Orange County. Now, part of the issue was zoning laws there in the town were different than the way that the Hasidic community is used to living, and part of it is religious, that they don't drive on the Sabbath, and so they do need to be within walking distance of synagogues, so they do want to live a little bit closer together than a typical rural area generally. I myself, to go to my year-round synagogue where I serve as assistant rabbi, I have to walk a mile living in a rural community in Sullivan County. Although in the summer I do have more options closer to my house. But the issue we're talking about here with this, so Kiryas Joel formed its own village. Now, part of the advantages of having a village is that you can have your own zoning laws, different than the rest of the town. So you might want to have more dense zoning or less dense zoning than the rest of the town, and that would be a reason to form a village. That you have like-minded individuals, and that's federalism. That you have, more direct local government. I think that's wonderful. And a lot of people are like, oh, these people, they don't deserve to govern themselves. Self-government is a basic idea that the conservative movement in America, which the Republican Party is a big representative of, supports. And just like some of these other villages, are formed because they don't want the high density housing, so too, legally, following laws and everything, in New York State, you can create villages if you have enough people and do things the way you want to do it as far as zoning, and there's nothing illegal about it. So that's, really a big issue here. So in Rockland County, you have a few villages, and many of whom have a large Jewish community, and there's another one similar to New Square, although New Square is a little bit outside of the rest of the community, it's not contiguous, but you have the village of Kaser, that is with the headquarters of the Vishnitz community of Monsey, although now that the previous Rebbe has gone on to the next world, it's no longer the sole, central location. You have Vishnitzer Rebbe's all over the world. We have one in Sullivan County, and he has not yet formed a village, although there was talk of that at one point. And there you have a community that exists without the village structure, but similar type of community. Much smaller, though, than what you have with Kiryas Joel and so forth. Now, later in history, Kiryas Joel, the next thing they did, actualizing federalism in an amazing, beautiful way, is they seceded from the school district, and there's a whole story behind that. But the fact of the matter is it was beneficial for both sides to secede from the school district, almost in a similar way that it was beneficial for both sides, or even more beneficial really for those outside of Kiryas Joel to form the village. It was certainly more advantageous for those outside of Kiryas Joel to form a school district. And now, something that's curiously being, marked as a problem is the secession of Kiryas Joel with a few more acres, a small amount of land, from the town of Monroe, forming a new town, the town of Palm Tree. And I made videos discussing that. But that is, the town of Palm Tree is once again a major actualization of federalism, that you have local governments on the most, local way, less centralized, people self-governing. And what's wrong with that? And so, if anything, the issues that exist in Rockland County would be solved. Certainly, one issue that a lot of people have is the East Ramapo School District, although it has been fixed over the past few years. A lot of the acrimony is left, thankfully, and people have been working together. But I've said for many years, the best solution, although it's more difficult to do so in Rockland County because the Jewish communities are spread out and maybe a little bit more integrated with these other communities. But if you could do some kind of gerrymandering, I looked at the congressional map in Maryland where you have totally non-contiguous congressional districts. I think it might be worthwhile to have non-contiguous school districts, or separate school districts if need be, seceding from the East Ramapo School District, and therefore weakening the power of the block vote, just like the secession of the town of Monroe weakened the block vote. The secession of Kiryas Joel from the town of Monroe meant that now the people in Kiryas Joel their vote no longer has influence in the town of Monroe. And the secession of the Kiryas Joel School District from the Monroe-Woodbury School District meant that the people in Kiryas Joel could no longer vote in the school district elections in Monroe-Woodbury. It was beneficial to both sides. And so, too, along these lines, to say the secession would be positive for both sides. These people are not going anywhere. They're not disappearing. There's nothing you can do about their existence. The only question is, how do you put self-government back into the hands of both sides? That's the Republican way. Meaning the Democrat way would be big government, centralized government. Everybody has to put up with one big county government, or one big town government or something, or one big federal government for that matter. That's why they want to get rid of the Electoral College and so forth. The Republican way is that is more federalism. Separate these communities into separate communities to allow for more self-government, smaller government, more local government. And what does it hurt you that within this area where you don't live, that they're developing more? If anything, if you don't want them around, you're going to want them to develop more in their own community and not come into your community. That's the question. What would you rather have? Would you rather that they spread out? That's the whole issue. Like in Airmont, there's not the high development, but they do want to build a mikveh and they do want to build schools, but there's not as much the high development, but they want to have the community infrastructure. So what would you rather have? There's going to be Hasidic Jews who don't want to live in the dense populations and do want a more suburban type of lifestyle. But so what do you prefer? Do you prefer? For their communities, they need their synagogues. They can't drive according to their religion, they can't drive to the synagogue on Sabbath. So they will need to start either synagogues or in private homes, prayer meetings. It makes more sense to let them build nice synagogues and nice, community things like mikvahs and schools. The schools, maybe you're right, you don't need them in the community, but then the question is school busing. Is it worthwhile for the taxpayers to pay for busing to private schools that are a little further away? And so and all these issues are worthwhile, but I do not believe it's anti-Semitic, but I do believe it's anti-Republican. So I'm not offended as a Jewish person, but I'm offended as a comedian, or rather I'm offended as a Republican. Thank you for watching. God bless. What does it hurt you? Let them live and let live. Isn't that what Christianity teaches? Live and let live. You live your way and they live their way, and you don't have to push your agenda on them, and they're not looking to push their agenda on you. They're just looking to live their lifestyle in their way. And this whole thing about they're going through the proper means to build a mikveh and everything, getting the permits and everything, and people are just trying to find some issue with it and claiming that it's lawless when they're following the laws. So, it goes back to that. Would you rather? Would you rather they just, this is why, people are tempted to not follow the laws, because they know if they do things the right way, they're going to be discriminated against illegally. I'm not saying that they do break the laws, but I'm saying it's a temptation there, because we're not allowed to. According to our religion, we're supposed to follow the civil laws, but we are following the civil laws, and we're still being discriminated against. So the question is, what would you rather? Would you rather? Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you later.